Alright, we're back. So, I am going to skip the werewolf because I do not feel like dying in the intro. I'd rather battle him if this was actually a challenge playthrough. Now, before I, alerted, you missed a note, it's over there. Yeah, yes, I know there's a note over there. I just want to get away from the werewolf. I will read it as soon as I get a weapon to beat his ass, so... Yeah, and I guess at this time it's... As it is per, this is a M game. You shouldn't be watching this footage if you're not mature, though. So if, language offends you, then... Sorry about that, but not short to tell you, I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I'm not, Oh boy. Well, I had to go to the dream anyway, so it doesn't matter. Literally, I would have used the lamp up there to teleport. Although I don't like that this is gonna silence me because I'm not gonna talk through this cutscene, so, Yeah, but anyways, yeah, language, so if you're not used to it, you're not used to it, so find a playthrough that doesn't involve that. Although with the difficulty of Bloodborne, I don't know a playthrough that doesn't include raging at the camera. And although I won't be raging, language isn't gonna be E for everyone in an M-rated game playthrough. That's just preposterous. I forgot how brief this cutscene is. I actually can talk through this one because it's just the appearance of the dream, which... Yeah, before I do anything, let's talk about the dream, shall we? Okay, so... The dream is... Well, we don't know what it is. Really, I have no clue how to explain the dream. The only comments I have about it is, just like a lot of people, I think those pillars you see in the background over there have a big deal with it. I don't know what they do. I don't know if there's other hunter dreams above them. I don't know if it's true that they stop at the top, especially with the multi-layered DLC, where the thing falls through. But let me just preface this by saying, this is a great example of how sometimes in the playthrough I'm not going to have the answer, because nobody has all the answers when it comes to the lore yet. But, I will bring some new ideas to the table, hopefully, but with this isn't my area. So, these gravestones take us to the Chalice Dungeons, and, that brings up the point. Is there going to be Chalice Dungeons in this playthrough? Yes and no. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the grinding in the Chalice Dungeons off camera and only record things in the Chalice Dungeon when they are specific to the lore. This is because, as any Blood player knows, you can spend hours in the Chalice Dungeons running in circles if you don't know what you're doing, and even if you do know what you're doing, they're repetitive to some extent. I will say from a gameplay perspective, I'm one of the people who actually likes the Chalice Dungeons, but I honestly like them because it's additional challenge, although the level design is something to be desired. And it's funny that I'm insulting their level design, whereas I would say that I think the procedural generation in No Man's Sky will turn out fine. Not to get off topic, but if that game does bomb in terms of procedural generation, you can go back to this playthrough and say you're wrong. I wouldn't be offended at all. It would actually be kind of funny. Although, for the developer's sake, Sean Murray, I hope they succeed. But anyways, to stay on topic and not annoy you guys, I think that the Hunter's Dream is something that... I mean, there's the other Dream Hunters. There's other hunters we're going to meet who reference the Dream, and I'll talk more about that later. But let's say hi to the Messengers here. Now, the Messengers are yet another thing I don't know what they are, but it is interesting how they, gameplay-wise, they show messages other players have left, but in terms of story, they appear in the intro, and that's about it. My thoughts on them is, what's interesting is that it looks like they almost bring the hunter to the hunter's dream, and then there's that whole weird thing where they're part of the teleportation thing, and if you read the gravestone, it says, awaken at select location in the arm, and then it says at the bottom, it says, awaken above ground. Now that's kind of strange, because remember what I just said about the pillars. We have the ground, and then we have the pillars, then we got the sky. So, awaken above ground, that's really interesting. I don't really understand what that means, but to get to points we have an abandoned doll, so until we have one insight, we can't talk to the doll yet, so let's collect our weapon. And I am easily going to go with the... I'll go with the Hunter's Axe. At least that is good at crowd control. Now I know that between PvE players and PvP players, people are going to say, this one is the best weapon, or this one is the best weapon, and I think it's more like Monster Hunter, where it's the best weapon is just the one that works best for the player. Besides, of course, stats that would prove me wrong, of course. So of course right now this kind of spoils the fact. Oh, I thought that was, I'm so silly. I thought that messenger was gonna be the one that gives you the item for the DLC, because I have played the DLC. No, you gotta kill, Vicar Amelia before you're allowed to. So... before we talk to Gehrman, we have to, I believe, defeat the first beast. Or I'm missing something? I don't know. We'll do that anyways so that we can talk about the lore. So let's go to the sick room and then equip the axe. So, as I was talking about when the first video cut out, and there are going to be cutouts between the videos, so I apologize, but, yeah, as far as this is a journey of our character's volition, which is the first time in the Soul series, so that's something to think about. So the other question that people may be wondering is, oops, didn't mean to do that. I was trying to turn on the light, which I'll figure that out. Turn on the light. I'm thinking of Fallout. I need a torch. Oh boy. Alright, so... okay, did I do this right? Yes, I did. Okay. So, here's my first test. Can I talk about lore well in combat? That's going to be extremely important to this playthrough. So let's try to fight this somewhat tough enemy while we mess around. Let's even try to riposte him. So yeah, the werewolf is, just feeding on a corpse here, and that's kind of strange. Not that a werewolf is feeding on a corpse, that makes sense, but, the question is, why is the werewolf in the clinic? And you may say, oh, that's obvious, the beast came through the window or something. I get that much, but the question is, if everything in the church is heavily guarded, whether by cursed hunters or not, how did something as big as a werewolf get directly almost to Lusefka? Because if you remember later on, we're supposed to be bringing people to Lusefka, and it's not like she says, there's a werewolf outside, and, correction here, there's a beast outside, and you need to kill it so that the people you send won't be eaten. Now, of course, this is assuming the player will deal with it, but from a lore perspective, I always wondered, besides challenging the player early on with this werewolf, giving them an imposing-looking enemy, I wondered, does it relate to the story? Now, it may be something that has nothing to do with the story, and it's just me being over-analytical, but you know, that's what's fun about Bloodborne. You can interpret things however you wish within evidence, so... let's read this note right here. Oh, stupid tutorial note. I thought it was going to be a lore note. And I bet this one that I didn't stop for won't be a lore note either. Okay, so... basically, from this point on, the main thing that I want to do is, obviously, what I've noticed in other lore playthroughs is stuff can get boring, because there's sections like the intro, for example, where there's plenty of lore to talk about, and then there's just, stabby, McStab content, and if you're heavy in combat for like 10 minutes, what are you going to talk about? And I think what I'm going to do to balance things out is I'm going to have lore topics prepared in the future. But for now, what I can talk about is the hunters here. Now, the hunters say things like, "You foul beast, it's all your fault." Now, we're not a beast, but they're definitely turning into one. So, one of the oldest questions, even since the demo footage, is why are we being called beast? Well, I think that that's an easy question to somewhat answer, believe it or not. I think that the whole issue here is that the hunters are going to perceive... I always liked that cleric beast sound. The hunters are going to perceive what they think is going on just as you're going to perceive what you think is going on. And I think the reason the hunters see us as a beast is a couple of things. Now, there's a very complex theory by a user on YouTube named Redgrave, which I suggest you check him out, where he says that it relates to a character in the DLC named Kaz, and how we may have been a part of bad things, and we may be to blame for all this, but that's a very deep theory that you should watch in his video. I'm not going to spoil his work here. I'll just recommend it. So this is the first lamp, so I'm going to light it here, and again, why do the messengers, I'm not going to say care, but why do they interact with the hunter? You know what I mean? Some item descriptions portray them as a mysterious, some portray them as almost laughable, like when they're wearing the top hat or the bloodied cloth because they just want to. So I'm going to pause the lore talking here and let Gilbert say his dialogue, and hopefully that'll give us something to talk about so I don't sound boring.
Oh, you must be a hunter, and not one from around here either. I'm Gilbert, a fellow outsider. You must have had a fine time of it. Yarnum has a special way of treating guests. Well, I don't think I could stand if I wanted to, but I'm willing to help if there's anything that can be done. This town is cursed. Whatever your reasons might be, you should plan a swift exit.
Oops, accidentally skipped that part of the dialogue. So before I let him go on, let's digest what he said so far. So he clearly knows, maybe by even our clothing or whatever we're saying to him, that we're an outsider, and Yarnamites don't really make well with the outside world. They kind of keep quiet. Now, you almost wonder, they talk about blood healing in this game like it's all secretive, but if you think about it, how secretive can the blood healing be if the very population uses it and, buys it with currency or whatever? So I tend to think that maybe the reason that Yarnamites are secretive is maybe, not to get into politics here, because I'm not sure that's deep in Bloodborne lore, but maybe Yarnamites tend to not share with outsiders because the healing church is like, look, we have this technology of blood healing and we're going to use it, but you don't tell outsiders about it, it's none of their business. Because, there's, in human history, there's much evidence of churches having power and being intimidating to the public, and maybe since Bloodborne does deal with some of those themes, maybe that's the reason. Also, Gilbert talks about he couldn't stand if he wanted to. This is obviously to imply he's going to turn into a beast, which you all, if you played this, you know that. I will talk about Gilbert getting infected later when he actually transforms. But for now, let's hear the rest of his dialogue.
Pale blood, you say? Never heard of it. But if it's blood you're interested in, you should try the healing chart.